So, the next one I want to talk about is on a food source. Now, this is, basically, I got kind of two examples for the food sources. So, for the first one, I'm going to stick to that same parcel where I was just talking about the other one in that kind of that hub or that staging area. Not far from there is a patch of white oaks, and I noticed that last year there was a significant amount of white oak acorns that were in the area, and there was definitely deer utilizing that. So essentially, kind of picked out a stand location, and this patch of white oaks, it wasn't too big, but it was big enough where deer could certainly millie around in there and either not present a good shot or be difficult for the trail camera to really get a good representation or catch all the deer movement. So again, with this one, I essentially, within that patch of oaks, there was a smaller one, just enough to where I was able to bend one of the branches down to create a licking branch, open up a patch of dirt. Again, basically in an opening where I was sitting from my tree stand, and created essentially a mock scrape for that. Again, with this one, I came across this location during the season, so I did freshen it up with some additional scent. Again, some of that running buck and some Evercalm, both on the branch and on the ground as well. And again, with this one, especially with the white oak drop that we had, it was not very long where I had a significant amount of pictures and got some good documentation of bucks that were in the area and eating on the acorns, as well as immediately started to utilize that scrape as well. And again, with that too, that's part of that idea of being able to kind of dictate or kind of encourage deer to basically kind of stand in one location compared to another. Those deer were naturally there eating within the acorns. Now I could have just left it alone without building that scrape, but with adding that scrape, again, it kind of created a bit of a focal point or something for the deer to focus on, or to draw their attention to while they're in the area that was in my shooting lane. And again, be able to have that distraction or have something that preoccupies that deer to be able to draw on them and be able to position them to stand in a position I want them. And then the last one I'm really going to cover is a scrape that you put out on like on a field edge, or in your food plot essentially. So these ones are probably honestly some of my least favorite ones. I don't really, I guess I'd say I don't really, focus on them as being, a key element of the strategy. But it is something that I certainly take in consideration, depending on the location of where you're going to put that scrape. Certainly, having it within bow range or within range of whatever, if you're using firearm or whatnot, having it within range is not, certainly not going to hurt you at all. That's one thing I did focus on, is making sure that the scrape that was there was within bow range. But unfortunately, a lot of times the deer just wouldn't utilize it as I was hoping they would. They've already kind of preoccupied themselves with feeding it within the food plot, to where, the vast majority of the pictures I was getting or the intel I was getting from the actual scrape itself would be mostly at night. So a lot of times those deer were in the food plot after dark, and as they're feeding throughout the course of the night, that's when the majority of the bucks were visiting that scrape within the food source. Now, again, that could be partially because of the size of the food plot I have. I'm looking at about a 3-acre opening. Now, if you had a smaller kill plot or a food plot that was more positioned basically as like a staging area instead of a destination food source, like kind of like what I got, having that scrape within the food source or within that food plot, if you're looking at something like a half acre or a quarter acre, you're gonna probably see deer utilize that a lot more, just because of the size of the plot and kind of their focus within it. So that actually brings up a story that I'll tell you in just a second as well. So in regards to my setup, again, this is essentially a pine tree that's in the food plot. It was a larger pine tree that was one that we didn't necessarily take out of the field just because of the size of it. And it had some naturally overhanging branches. In years past, I noticed that around that tree, there would be multiple small, scrapes that were made, again, primarily probably at night. So what I ended up doing was essentially trimming back a lot of those other branches that were overhanging within a deer's reach and basically focus it on one side of the tree. That's where I had my deer blind currently and had that essentially be the focal point. So instead of having the potential for multiple scrapes around the tree, I created essentially one, central or one focal, area on that tree. So all the deer, if they want to, utilize the scrape, that's the area that they have to use. So again, kind of concentrate some of the scent distribution to one side of the tree, basically forcing the deer to utilize it in an area where I could again, be able to have a camera on it a little bit easier, as well as having it on the side of the tree that I'm currently sitting on. So if a deer did utilize that while I was hunting, it would be in a position where I could get a better shot.